3 weeks after the incident, Outpost Kappa 7, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session on the neutral world of Nexus Prime. Representatives from 47 different species gathered to discuss what military analysts were calling the Rodriguez event a tactical engagement that had fundamentally changed how the galaxy viewed human military capability. Commander Zexhai found himself standing before the assembled delegates, preparing to deliver testimony that would reshape interstellar politics. Beside him, still wearing a medical support brace on his left arm, stood Chief Petty Officer Marcus Rodriguez, looking distinctly uncomfortable in a dress uniform that had been hastily tailored to fit his frame. "Honored delegates," Zexhai began. His words translated simultaneously into 47 languages. 3 weeks ago, our understanding of defensive warfare was revolutionized by the actions of a single human warrior. What we witnessed challenges every assumption we've made about individual capability, tactical innovation, and the nature of military determination. The Valkyrie representative, Supreme Admiral Thekvar, rose from his position. He was an impressive figure, even by Valkyrie standards, nearly 8 feet tall, with the scarred carapace that marked a career soldier. But when he spoke, there was no anger in his voice, only professional respect. "Honored Council, I wish to address the events at Outpost Kappa 7 directly. My forces attempted to capture what we believed to be a minor defensive installation. Instead, we encountered a level of tactical sophistication that exceeded our most advanced War College scenarios." The human designation Rodriguez did not merely defend his position. He transformed the entire battlefield into a weapon system we could not counter. Rodriguez shifted uncomfortably as attention focused on him. He had argued against attending these proceedings, insisting that he had simply done his job and didn't understand why everyone was making such a big deal about it. "Chief Rodriguez," spoke Councilor Prenta, a distinguished Elvani whose species had contributed some of the galaxy's greatest military theorists. "Please describe your thought process during the siege. How did you conceptualize your defensive strategy?" Rodriguez looked around the vast chamber, clearly wishing he was anywhere else. "Ma'am, with respect, I didn't have a strategy in the way you might think of one. I had a mission, hold the position as long as possible. Everything else just followed from that." "But the complexity of your preparations, the integration of multiple weapon systems, the geological warfare," Councilor Prenta pressed. "These indicate planning on a scale that should have required extensive staff support." "Ma'am, I had all the staff support I needed. The previous garrison left behind detailed technical manuals, engineering schematics, and about 10 terabytes of documentation on every system in the facility. When you've got nothing to do but read for 3 months while people shoot at you, you learn a lot." A ripple of what might have been laughter passed through the assembly. The human's casual tone while discussing what military historians were already calling one of the most brilliant defensive actions in galactic history was somehow both endearing and intimidating. Supreme Admiral Thekvar stood again. "If I may, Honored Council, I believe we are focusing on the wrong aspect of these events. The tactical innovations were remarkable, yes, but they are not what makes this human unique. What makes Chief Rodriguez exceptional is something that cannot be taught or replicated through technology." "Please elaborate, Supreme Admiral," the Council President invited. "The human never considered surrender as an option. Not once in 73 days of increasingly impossible circumstances did he seek to negotiate, retreat, or abandon his position. This is not ignorance or fanaticism. Our psychological evaluation teams have confirmed that Chief Rodriguez clearly understood his situation throughout the siege. He simply refused to accept defeat as inevitable." Dr. Kasani, the galaxy's leading expert on combat psychology, activated her speaking podium. "This is what our analysis teams find most fascinating. Most sentient beings, when faced with overwhelming odds, experience what we term cognitive defeat. The mind begins preparing for failure long before physical defeat occurs. This human showed no signs of cognitive defeat even when his situation appeared hopeless." Rodriguez looked puzzled by the discussion. "Doc, if you don't mind me saying so, I think you're overcomplicating this. It's not that I couldn't imagine losing. I just couldn't imagine stopping. There's a difference. Could you explain that difference? Doctor? Cassani asked. Sure, losing is something that happens to you. Stopping is something you choose to do. As long as I could still fight, I was still in the game. As long as I was still in the game, the Valkyrie hadn't won. As long as they hadn't won, I had a chance to figure out how to beat them. The simplicity of the logic seemed to stun the assembled delegates. Here was a philosophical approach to warfare that none of their military academies had ever considered. General Vactith of the Gorvani Heavy Infantry spoke up. Chief Rodriguez, were you not concerned about the statistical probability of success? Our analysis indicates that your chances of survival were less than 1% when the siege began. Rodriguez grinned, and Zexhai noticed that several delegates leaned back involuntarily. The human smile was somehow more intimidating than his serious expression. General, in my line of work, we've got a saying, the only easy day was yesterday. If I worried about statistical probability every time the odds looked bad, I'd have quit this job on day one of training. Besides, statistics are just numbers until someone decides to prove them wrong. But surely you must have considered the possibility of death, pressed Counselor Yathar of the pacifist Centauri. Rodriguez's expression became thoughtful. Ma'am, of course I thought about it. I'm not suicidal, and I'm not stupid. But here's the thing. Dying was just one possible outcome. There were lots of others. I could figure out how to win. I could hold long enough for reinforcement. I could make the cost of victory so high that the Valkyrie decided it wasn't worth it. When you focus on the possible outcomes instead of the probable ones, you find a lot more options. The Valkyrie delegation requested permission to address the council directly. To everyone's surprise, it wasn't Supreme Admiral Lekvar who spoke, but Commander Zenkoth, one of the officers who had been captured during the siege. Honored Council, I participated in the siege of Outpost Kappa 7 from the first day to the last. I wish to share what we learned about humanity through this encounter. He paused, gathering his thoughts. We Valkyrie pride ourselves on our military efficiency. We have conquered 17 star systems through superior tactics, better equipment, and overwhelming force. We believe these advantages made us unbeatable. What we discovered at Outpost Kappa 7 was that advantages mean nothing if your opponent refuses to acknowledge them. The human designation Rodriguez did not fight our strengths. He made our strengths irrelevant. When we had numerical superiority, he made numbers meaningless by fighting from positions where only one of us could engage him at a time. When we had better equipment, he used our equipment against us. When we had tactical doctrine, he ignored doctrine entirely and made up his own rules. Commander Zenkoth looked directly at Rodriguez. Chief, your species does not fight wars. Your species fights problems. You do not see enemies to be defeated. You see challenges to be solved? This is a fundamental difference in thinking that makes humans unlike any species we have encountered. The implications of this observation rippled through the assembly. If humans approached warfare as problem-solving rather than force application, it explained their seemingly impossible military achievements. President Tivo called for order as the chamber erupted in discussion. Chief Rodriguez, in light of these observations, how would you describe humanity's approach to military conflict? Rodriguez considered the question seriously. Mr. President, I can only speak for myself and the military tradition I come from. But in the SEALs, we're taught that the mission comes first, always. Not survival, not glory, not even victory in the traditional sense, completing the mission. My mission was to hold that position. Everything else was just problem-solving. But what about the broader implications? Asked Counselor Prenta. Your actions have demonstrated capabilities that could change the balance of power in ongoing conflicts. Rodriguez looked uncomfortable again. Ma'am, I'm a petty officer in the United States Navy. Questions about balance of power and galactic politics are way above my pay grade. But I can tell you this, what I did wasn't special because I'm some kind of superhuman. It was special because I had enough time and resources to prepare properly. Give any decent soldier 3 months to turn a mountain into a fortress, and they'll surprise you with what they can accomplish. Admiral Lekvar stood once more. If I may, Chief Rodriguez speaks with characteristic human modesty. But what he describes as decent soldier capability represents tactical thinking that exceeds our highest military education standards. The innovations he developed during the siege are already being studied by military academies across 12 different species. What innovations specifically? Asked General Vactith. The integration of civilian infrastructure as weapon systems. The use of controlled geological events as area denial weapons. The Valkyrie heavy weapons fired in perfect synchronization. Plasma cannons, particle beams, and kinetic bombardment systems unleashed their fury on the command bunker. The mountain shook with the impact, sending avalanches of rock and debris cascading down its face. For 30 seconds, the bombardment continued, turning the entire peak into a furnace of destruction. When the weapons fell silent, nothing remained but molten rock and twisted metal where the bunker had stood. Target destroyed, the Valkyrie commander announced across all frequencies, his translated voice carrying unmistakable satisfaction. Human resistance eliminated. Advance and secure the position. Commander HFY felt his heart sink. Whatever else could be said about the human, he had fought with courage that deserved better than this ending. Around him, his reconnaissance team stood in stunned silence, watching the Valkyrie forces begin their triumphant advance toward the smoking crater. Then the mountain moved. Not metaphorically. The entire western face of the mountain shifted, revealing that what they had taken for natural rock formations were actually massive camouflaged blast doors. Hidden weapon emplacements emerged from concealment, systems that had been built into the mountain itself during the original construction, and forgotten by everyone except one very thorough Navy SEAL, who had spent 3 cycles studying every blueprint and maintenance record in the base's archives. The hidden defenses opened fire with weapons that had been charging for 3 days straight. Plasma batteries that drew power directly from the mountain's geothermal core unleashed bolts that turned Valkyrie battle armor into vapor. Railguns built for ship-to-ship combat fired solid tungsten, projectiles that punched through multiple targets before embedding themselves in distant mountainsides. The Valkyrie advance stopped as if it had hit a wall. What the hell? One of HFY's Marines breathed. Speaking for everyone present, Rodriguez's voice came through the communication system again, now broadcasting on every frequency simultaneously. He sounded tired, but there was something else in his voice now, satisfaction, the deep contentment of a plan executed perfectly. Valkyrie forces, this is Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez. I want to thank you for being so predictable. See, for the past 73 days you've been helping me with a little construction project. Every time you forced me to retreat, I wasn't running away. I was leading you exactly where I needed you to be. The hidden weapon systems continued their barrage, but that was only the beginning. Across the battlefield, carefully prepared charges detonated in sequence. The ground beneath the Valkyrie forces began to collapse as underground chambers that had been excavated over weeks suddenly gave way. Entire companies of enemy troops found themselves trapped in sinkholes filled with improvised explosives, but the masterstroke came when Rodriguez triggered the main surprise. He had been preparing, the Valkyrie had positioned their heavy weapons on what they thought was solid ground, a ridge that provided excellent elevation and firing angles on the command bunker. What they didn't know was that Rodriguez had spent every night for the past month tunneling beneath that ridge, using mining equipment from the base's excavation stores to hollow out a vast chamber directly under their position. When the supports gave way, 24 Valkyrie heavy weapons platforms disappeared into the mountain like they had never existed. You see, Rodriguez continued, his voice now coming from speakers throughout the hidden weapon systems. The thing about being a SEAL is that we're trained to use everything available as a weapon. And when you gave me 3 months to prepare on a mountain full of mining equipment, power systems, and enough raw materials to build a small city, well, I got creative. Through his enhanced scopes, HFY could see the Valkyrie forces in complete disarray. Their command structure had been disrupted by the loss of their heavy weapons. Their communication was being jammed by transmitters hidden throughout the mountain. Troops that had been confident in their numerical superiority were now fighting shadows, never knowing where the next attack would come from. "Commander ZXHY," Rodriguez's voice addressed him directly. "You and your people might want to pull back another kilometer or so. Things are about to get a little noisy up here." As if on cue, a new series of explosions began. These weren't random detonations, they were precisely timed to create a chain reaction. Rodriguez had turned the entire mountain into a massive kinetic weapon, using controlled avalanches to reshape the battlefield to his advantage. Lieutenant Cora was frantically consulting her datapad. "Commander, the seismic readings are off the charts. He's not just fighting a battle, he's conducting geological warfare." The Valkyrie commander's voice cut through the chaos, transmitted in the clear on emergency frequencies. "All units, fall back to safe distance. Repeat, all units retreat. We need orbital support." Rodriguez's response was immediate. "Sorry, but orbital support is currently unavailable. See, I may have neglected to mention that this isn't just a military outpost. It's also a research station. Specifically, one that's been working on improvements to planetary defense shields." Above them, the sky shimmered as a massive energy dome materialized around the entire mountain complex. It was a defensive shield generator powerful enough to protect a small city. Its power draw so enormous that it had taken 3 cycles of careful preparation to charge the necessary systems. "What you're looking at," Rodriguez explained conversationally, "is a Mark 7 planetary defense shield powered by a fusion reactor that I may have overcharged just a little bit. It'll hold against orbital bombardment for, maybe 6 hours. Maybe 12 if I'm feeling optimistic. But here's the thing about shields. They work both ways. Nothing gets out while they're active." The implications of his words sank in slowly. The Valkyrie forces were trapped on the mountain with a human who had just demonstrated that he had turned the entire landscape into his personal weapon system. "You're all cordially invited." Rodriguez continued, "to surrender. I promise to treat you according to the Galactic Conventions on Warfare. You'll be fed, given medical attention, and held until proper prisoner exchange can be arranged. The alternative is that we finish this the hard way. And trust me, after 73 days of planning, I've got enough surprises left to keep us all entertained until that shield generator burns out." ZXHY found himself laughing despite the situation. In his 40 years of military service, he had never seen anything like this. One human had not only survived a siege that should have killed him in the first hour, he had used the siege itself as cover to prepare a trap that had neutralized an entire Valkyrie assault force. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving surrender signals from multiple Valkyrie units. It appears their commander is requesting terms." Through the scope, ZXHY could see Rodriguez emerging from a concealed position near what had been the command bunker. The human was moving carefully, his left arm clearly broken, his uniform shredded. But his posture was that of a man who had just completed a job he was proud of. "Rodriguez," ZXHY called out, "this is Commander ZXHY. Do you need medical assistance?" "I could use a medic, a hot meal, and about 12 hours of sleep," Rodriguez replied. "But first, I need to process some prisoners. I may have gotten a little carried away with the whole refusing to lose thing." As Galactic Defense Force medical teams moved in to assist with both the wounded human and the surrendering Valkyrie forces, Lieutenant Cora approached ZXHY with a bewildered expression. "Commander, I need to understand how this was possible. According to every tactical doctrine I've studied, what we just witnessed should not have happened. One individual cannot hold a position against those odds, cannot turn the landscape itself into a weapon system, cannot trap an entire assault force with improvised engineering." ZXHY watched as Rodriguez supervised the processing of Valkyrie prisoners, the human treating his former enemies with professional courtesy despite his obvious injuries. Several Valkyrie officers approached him with what looked like respect, apparently impressed by his tactical demonstration. "Lieutenant," ZXHY said thoughtfully, "I think we've been looking at this wrong. We assumed this was a story about one human refusing to lose. But that's not what happened here. Then what did happen?" We found a human who refused to think like he was losing. There's a difference. Most beings, when faced with impossible odds, focus on the impossibility. This human focused on the odds. He spent 3 cycles not just surviving, but learning. Learning the enemy, learning the terrain, learning what resources he had available. Then he used all of that knowledge to change the rules of engagement entirely. Rodriguez was now accepting medical attention from a Thraxian medic, arguing good-naturedly about whether he needed to be sedated for treatment of his injuries. Several of the Valkyrie prisoners were watching him with obvious fascination, as if trying to understand how someone so thoroughly outgunned had managed to defeat them. The Valkyrie have been conquering worlds for centuries, Zexai continued. They've perfected a military doctrine based on overwhelming force and predictable outcomes. What they encountered here was something entirely outside their experience, an opponent who used their own strength against them. The medical team was insisting that Rodriguez be evacuated for proper treatment, but the Commander Zexai stared at the tactical display with growing confusion. The readouts made no sense. According to their sensors, Outpost Kappa 7 should have been nothing but rubble and ash. The Valkyrie assault fleet had hit this sector 3 standard cycles ago with enough firepower to crack a moon. Every military installation in a 50 light-year radius had been obliterated, except this one was still transmitting. Are you certain the readings are accurate? Zexai asked his sensor operator, a young Thraxian with nervous tentacles that kept twitching. Yes, sir. I've run the scans 4 times. There's definitely an active power signature down there, and the automated defense grid is still functional somehow. The bridge of the Galactic Defense Force cruiser Righteous Fury buzzed with quiet conversation. Officers from 6 different species huddled over their stations, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. This was supposed to be a cleanup mission, a simple sweep to confirm what everyone already knew, that Outpost Kappa 7 had fallen like every other human military installation in this sector. Humans were fierce fighters, everyone acknowledged that. When the Galactic Council had first made contact with Earth 50 years ago, humanity had surprised everyone with their tenacity and tactical thinking. But they were just one small planet, recently advanced to faster-than-light travel. Against the Valkyrie supremacy, with their vast fleets and centuries of military experience, even human determination had its limits, or so everyone thought. Sir, the communications officer, a blue-skinned Andorian, spoke up. I'm detecting a transmission from the surface. It's a human military frequency. Zexai's 4 eyes widened. His species, the Kethrani, had evolved from pack hunters, and his instincts were screaming that something was very wrong here. Put it through. Static crackled across the bridge speakers, then cleared to reveal a human voice. It was rough, tired, but unmistakably determined. This is Chief Petty Officer Marcus Tank Rodriguez, United States Navy SEALs, currently holding Outpost Kappa 7. To whoever's picking up this transmission, I need ammunition, medical supplies, and a really big cup of coffee. In that order. Silence fell across the bridge. Several junior officers looked around nervously, unsure if they had heard correctly. Zexai found his voice first. Human. This is Commander Zexai of the Galactic Defense Force vessel Righteous Fury. Are you saying you've been holding that position for 3 standard cycles? Against the Valkyrie? A sound came through the speakers that took the crew a moment to identify as laughter. 3 cycles? Is that what you guys call 73 days? Then yeah, I've been holding. Though holding might be generous. It's more like I've been making the Valkyrie work for every inch while I've been slowly giving ground. But I'm still here, and they're still not past me. Zexai-S tactical officer, a methodical Vulcani, pulled up the orbital scans. Commander, the readings show massive battle damage across the entire installation. There are crater patterns consistent with orbital bombardment, plasma scoring on every structure still standing, and debris fields suggesting multiple large-scale engagements. Rodriguez, Zexai said into the com, what's your current status? How many survivors do you have with you? Another pause, longer this time. Define survivors, Commander. If you mean how many people are still breathing, that'd be 1. If you mean how many people are still in fighting condition, that'd also be 1. If you mean how many people are too stubborn to admit they're supposed to be dead, well, that's definitely 1. The bridge erupted in quiet murmurs. Several species in the Galactic Council had legends of lone warriors holding impossible positions, but those were myths, stories told to inspire children. This was real. You're saying you're alone down there? Zexhai asked. Alone, except for about 3,000 very frustrated Valkyrie who can't figure out why I won't just die already. But hey, I've got enough supplies to last another few days, and I've got positions prepared all the way back to the command center. They want this place, they can have it one room at a time. Lieutenant Cora, the ship's anepsychologist, leaned toward Zexhai. She was Elvani, a species known for their analytical minds. Commander, this is unprecedented. No single individual has ever held a position against concentrated Valkyrie assault for more than a few hours. Their standard doctrine is overwhelming force application until resistance ceases. Rodriguez, Zexhai called out, we're reading multiple Valkyrie signatures in your area. What's your tactical situation? Oh, you mean my current neighborhood watch? Well, there's about 200 Valkyrie ground troops currently trying to dig me out of the command bunker. They've got siege equipment, heavy weapons, and what I think might be a battle mech. I've got 3 frag grenades, half a magazine for my rifle, a combat knife, and a really bad attitude. I like my odds. The human's casual tone while describing what should be certain death sent chills through the mixed species crew. Sir, the sensor operator spoke up again. I'm detecting movement on the surface. Large-scale Valkyrie formations converging on the central structure. It looks like they're preparing for a final assault. Zexhai made a decision that would have consequences he couldn't imagine. Helm, take us down. Landing approach, but keep us ready to lift off quickly. Sir? His first officer, a cautious Kethrani like himself, questioned. Our orders were to verify the status of the outpost and report back. We're not equipped for a ground engagement with Valkyrie forces of that size. Our orders, Zexhai said firmly, were to determine the status of any survivors and render assistance if possible. There's a survivor down there who's been holding a line that should have broken 3 cycles ago. I want to see how? As the righteous fury descended through the atmosphere, the scope of the battle below became clear. The outpost had been built into a natural mountain formation, with the main structures carved into the rock face. What had once been a standard military installation now looked like an ancient fortress after a siege. Blast craters dotted the landscape for kilometers in every direction. Weapon emplacements lay twisted and broken. Supply depots had been reduced to blackened ruins, but in the center of it all, the command bunker still stood. Smoke rose from its defensive positions, and energy weapon fire lit up the approaching dusk as the lone human continued his impossible fight. Rodriguez, this is Commander Zexhai. We're coming down to your position. Can you mark a safe landing zone? Commander, with respect, there's no such thing as a safe zone down here. But if you can put down about 2 clicks northeast of my position, there's a landing pad the Valkyrie haven't bothered to crater yet. Probably figured they wouldn't need it once they finished with me. The ship touched down with barely controlled urgency. Through the bridge viewports, they could see the flashes of weapons fire in the distance, painting the mountainside in strobing colors. Sir, Lieutenant Cora said, consulting her datapad, I've been reviewing human military doctrine. This individual, a Navy SEAL, represents an elite special operations unit. Their training emphasizes operating in small teams under extreme conditions, but this goes beyond any documented human military capability. Zexhai was already moving toward the airlock. Assemble a reconnaissance team. Light weapons only. We're not here to start a firefight we can't finish. I want to see this human for myself. The team that left the ship consisted of Zexhai, Lieutenant Cora, and 4 Galactic Defense Force Marines from various species. They moved carefully across the broken terrain, using their advanced sensors to avoid Valkyrie patrols. The closer they got to the command bunker, the more evidence they found of the prolonged battle. Defensive positions had been built, and rebuilt multiple times as the human fell back. Improvised explosives had been crafted from whatever materials were available. Valkyrie equipment lay scattered and destroyed, often in ways that suggested incredibly creative applications of basic military hardware. "Look at this," one of the Marines, a massive Gorvani, pointed to a disabled Valkyrie hover tank. "The armor has been penetrated from below. Something small, precise. How does one individual disable armored vehicles?" They found their answer at the next defensive line. Hidden beneath debris and camouflaged with battlefield remains were the entrances to a tunnel system. The human had used maintenance passages, utility conduits, and hand-dug tunnels to create a defensive network that allowed him to appear anywhere on the battlefield. "It's not just one position," Zexhai realized. "He's been fighting from dozens of positions, making the Valkyrie think they're facing a larger force." The sound of combat grew louder as they approached the final perimeter. Through his enhanced vision scope, Zexhai could see the Valkyrie assault formation. They had the command bunker surrounded and were systematically destroying the outer defenses. Then he saw the human. Marcus Rodriguez was exactly what the name Tank suggested, a broad, muscular human who moved with the fluid grace of a predator despite obvious injuries. His left arm hung at an awkward angle, and his face was streaked with blood and grime. His uniform was more patches and improvisation than original material, but his eyes burned with an intensity that made Zexhai take an involuntary step backward. Rodriguez was moving between firing positions with inhuman speed, appearing long enough to eliminate targets before vanishing again. His weapon fire was precise,